I've started up VisualStudio.net, and you'll want to make sure not to bypass this My Profile page. As a Visual Basic developer, you'll note first of all that many keystrokes and settings are different than what you're used to. You can either adapt to the Visual Studio Developer profile, or you can modify it for your own needs. You'll note that some of the options include Visual Basic Developer. You may find this a useful choice, so that keystrokes match the type of keystrokes you're used to using from VB6. You can choose VB6 Developer for that profile, and you'll see the window layout change to match the VB6 look and feel. If I rearrange the windows here, you'll also see that I can choose for keyboard schemes, VB6 or other options, for window layout, VB6 or others, and you can, if you'd like, filter the help so you only see help for VB or related topics. At this point, I find it useful just to leave all the help topics available, so I've not modified that option. You can also choose to show help internal, that is within the same windows as your other windows in Visual Studio, or external, to have it float in a different window. You'll see that you can't do this until Visual Studio is restarted. For now, actually, I like internal help. I'll leave that there. You'll notice that we're working at a rather low screen resolution. For your own development work, you'll want to use a very high resolution monitor or perhaps even two monitors. With external help selected, you can move the help onto a second display and keep your work on the primary display. For now, we're working at 640 by 480 and we don't have much room to play with. Here you'll notice some of these windows on the side are taking up real estate. If I choose the Auto Hide button, then that window disappears when I leave that spot. So I'll turn that one on Auto Hide, turn Dynamic Help window Auto Hide, and now we get on the side windows that can be displayed or not, depending on whether we select them. You'll find this technique useful even if you're working at a high screen resolution. Now that we've set our profile, let's try creating a new project. I'll go to the File menu, choose New, Project, and open up the New Project dialog box. Here you'll see on the left a list of project types, including Visual Basic projects, Visual C# projects, Setup and Deployment projects, Other projects, and Visual Studio Solutions here. We'll start by looking at Visual Basic projects and look at what different options you have. On the right, we can create a basic Windows application. This is the kind of application you might have created in VB6, using forms and all running on the client side. In this environment, however, you're no longer using VB6 Forms. We'll be using a new Forms package called Windows Forms. We'll take a look at that in a bit. You can create a class library. This is much like creating an ActiveX DLL in VB6, a component library containing classes. You can create a Windows control library. This is like creating an ActiveX component, an ActiveX control in VB6 that you can place onto a Windows form or a web form. You can create an ASP.NET web application. This basically takes the place of Visual InterDev in Visual Studio 6. That is, this is an environment for creating web applications using a new Forms package, Web Forms, that make it easy to create user interfaces for ASP.NET applications. ASP.NET Web Services allow you to create distributed components that run across the web that allow you to have functionality available over the internet, not just on a single machine. Web services are the basis of the .NET initiative. This is what Microsoft is focusing on as the centerpiece of creating distributed .NET applications. You can create a web control library. That is, just like creating a Windows control library for Windows Forms, you can create web controls for web forms. .NET gives you the option of creating a console application. That is, should you be so inclined, you can create an application that runs in a DOS window. We have a session covering that later on that shows you how you can create your own test harnesses and otherwise useful DOS-based applications. They're actually not running in DOS. They just run in a DOS window looking like old command line utilities. You can create a Windows service. This kind of application was difficult, if not impossible, to create in VB6, but it's very easy to create in the .NET platform. They also have templates for an empty project, an empty web project, and a new project in an existing folder. That is, sucking in all the pieces of a project from an existing folder holding those project pieces. For now, let's start by creating a simple Windows application. I'll name this application Hello World. One thing to note is you should take careful stock of where you're actually placing your application. You have the option of choosing a folder here. You must keep careful track of this because unlike in VB6, when you first create a project in the .NET platform, it actually places files into this folder. Unless you want to be left with lots of folders littering your hard drive, you want to make sure you keep track of where you placed your projects and delete them from the hard drive if you don't care to keep them. For now, I'll create this first project, which builds up a Windows form for us and creates the files you need to work with that form. You'll notice on the right-hand side, I have the standard properties window you're used to seeing. On the left-hand side over here, a basic form we'll use for designing this application. If you'll take a moment and flip through some of the menus that Visual Studio includes, you'll see that, as they say in the movies, you're not in Kansas anymore. All these menus are very different than the ones you're used to seeing in Visual Basic 6. As a matter of fact, there's a lot more menus and a lot more options available to you as you work through these various menus.